Hello, and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk with immigration attorney Brian D. Lerner. I'd like to talk a little bit in this video about the decision probably a lot of you have heard about. I know there's probably some panic in the immigration community. There's probably fear that everything is completely denied. As far as the executive orders go, that there's no more DAPA or DACA, that the priority designations by the Department of Homeland Security are over, that everything's back the way it was before the orders. And I'm here to try to clear up some issues regarding the decision and to give a little background on it, and then to give my humble opinion of where it may go from here. To give a little background, on November 20th, 2014, President Obama, after waiting over a year and a half for the Senate for the House to rule on the immigration reform package, which was passed by the Senate, and after it was just tabled by House Speaker Boehner, where it wasn't brought for a vote. President Obama, seeing that there are millions of people essentially needed immigration reform, that immigration reform was needed, decided to use his executive powers in which to issue executive orders. He had previously issued an executive order for DACA, and that is deferred action for childhood arrivals, which, by the way, that particular executive order still stands. Nothing has stopped that. Nothing has granted a preliminary injunction against that. And because essentially Congress would not act on the matter, he took whatever he could into his own hands, using his own powers under the executive branch, and created the expanded DACA, created DAPA, that's for parents of childhood arrivals, and then there was a very comprehensive deportation priority memo put out by Jed Johnson, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and then after that was issued, it was the expanded DACA was to go into effect on February 18th, 2015, where they would start taking applications. And one day before that, a federal judge essentially granted a preliminary injunction to stop the processing of the new DACA and to stop the processing of DAPA applications. Basically, there were about 26 states that had brought a lawsuit trying to show it was unconstitutional, among several governors who joined in. And the basic issue was that they're claiming that President Obama exceeded his power. The bottom line here is that a preliminary, and what does that mean? That does not mean that it has been ruled that it's actually unconstitutional, or that it has been ruled that President Obama exceeded his power. What it means is a preliminary injunction essentially stops the execution or the implementation of these new programs while everything else goes forward in the court until the court can make a final decision. So essentially, a preliminary injunction is a temporary measure which stops or halts execution of it during the pendency of the remaining part of the court trial. And now the preliminary injunction was about a 120-page, give or take, decision, and it does seem that the judge tried in the best way that he could to cover all the bases. But you have to look at the history of what has happened. In in law school, and then we have a term called forum shopping. And forum shopping, while in most cases is not legal, in some cases it is, basically means that who's ever filing the lawsuit will try to search for where they can file the lawsuit for a judge or a jurisdiction which they know is favorable to their point of view, of which they have a better chance of succeeding. Like, for example, if this lawsuit was filed in California, it would have been thrown out pretty much before the ink got dry. Okay. But they happen to know of this particular judge in Texas, Brownsville, Texas, who was outspoken in the first place about President Obama's policies. This particular judge was put in place by former President Bush. It was clear on the record that he did not like the policies of what President Obama stood for or what was doing, and that he did not like these before the suit ever hit his desk. Okay, so this particular judge was predisposed to try to find some way in which to grant what the plaintiffs were asking for in the first place. As it seems, it was okay, it was legal for the suit to be filed in that particular jurisdiction for that particular judge. But keep in mind, they definitely forum shopped, and they definitely tried to find a judge who was on their side in the first place. Now, in reviewing the decision itself, it goes into great detail trying to find reasons that the preliminary injunction should be granted. And without going into all the specifics, a huge portion of the reasoning that the preliminary injunction was granted is because of the economic damages that would occur to the states. And these economic damages ranged from the cost of driver's licenses, to insurance and so forth. And the reality is, when you look and read the opinion, there's really no specific facts to back up any of the indications or the allegations that it's going to cost the states all this extra money. If the president's orders, executive orders go through, and minus that, let's take for example, a situation where it will cost the states a lot of extra money. Does the fact that it costs the states all this extra money, which, again, there's lots of reports, the programs go through that actually the states will be making a lot more money. I mean, that's the reality. The people are going to, stop having to, get paid under the table. They're going to be able to get real jobs. They're going to pay taxes. There's going to be a lot more money that is coming into the states, not going out of the states. That's the reality. But what I'm trying to point out here is that all this argument that it's going to cost the states all this extra money, what does that have to do with the executive orders? Okay, just because it may cost states money does not mean that President Obama did not have the authorization or the legal authority to do what he did. Okay, so the argument that was put forth by the judge and going into such grand detail about all the alleged economic injury that would occur, number one, is misplaced because it doesn't address the real issue of authority, of whether or not President Obama had the authority. And then there's the issue of the original DACA. How can the judge make a ruling that the expanded DACA is not constitutional and beyond the authority of President Obama, but the original DACA was under the authority of President Obama and was under proper executive action? It just doesn't make sense. And so the here comes my opinion part. The reality is this preliminary injunction and the 120-page article did not really um, go into any substantive depth of the ultimate outcome of this. And it seems that there is a very, very high likelihood that this preliminary injunction will be stayed. Everything will go forward. But even if it's not, the ultimate decision by either an appellate court or the Supreme Court will show that President Obama did have the authority to do what he did, and that it will go forward. Now, let's get into the what the decision says right now as far as what you can and can't do. Okay, expanded DACA and DAPA. Those are the two things that have been preliminarily enjoined to go forward. But the prosecutorial discretion guidelines, which was again a comprehensive memo by Jed Johnson of the Homeland Security, that still goes forward. That still can be implemented. So anybody who is going to want to do a preliminary or a prosecutorial discretion packet, that can still go forward. Well, anyways, that's my 2 cents of the decision and where it stands. If you're thinking that everything is down the tubes and it's a total defeat, it's not. And many times in lawsuits, you have to fight a couple or 3 battles to win the war. And this, to be honest, doesn't look like a major setback. It looks like once time's all said and done, it'll be able to go forward and be implemented. It would be incredibly surprising if this judge's ruling stands. But we'll see what happens. Keep you updated and more on the coming videos.